I'm Pete Madsen, and that was an original tune of mine called the Ironweed Rag. The Ironweed Rag is a piece that uses CAGED system chord forms to come up with new verses. You might have noticed that I started off in the key of E, and then playing your normal first position E chord. But then I went up here and started playing some variations. So I want to show you that song, but first things first, I need to talk about the CAGED system. So for those of you who are not familiar with CAGED, it's based on these 5 chords: C, A, G, E, and D. Those are all major triads, and there's also the equivalent of the minor and the 7th chords. I'll talk a little bit more about 7th chords as I teach you the song Ironweed Rag. So what we do with those CAGED ideas is we take those chords, and instead of calling them actually chords, we call them chord shapes. So for instance, this C, that's a C chord, but it's a C chord with a C shape. Now I can move up the fretboard in the order of shapes, C, A, G, E, D. Let me show you what I mean. There's C with a C shape. Here's C with an A shape. I think you can see that that's the same shape right there. That's your A shape. I slide it up to the 5th fret, add my first finger, and I've got a C with an A shape. Same chord, right? Then I've got my C with a G shape, C, A, G. G is the 3rd chord in the sequence. So I'm going to show you the full chord. That's hard to make. It's a big stretch here between my middle and my index fingers. So I'm going to shorten that. I can shorten it to just 5 strings or just 4 strings. You might recognize that chord if you've ever played any fingerstyle blues. There's a lot of A chord. Ubiquitous Robert Johnson turnaround. So that's that. What's sometimes called a long A is actually a G shape. And I moved it up here between the 5th and the 8th fret, and I've got a C chord. My next chord, C, A, G, E, it's just a normal bar chord that you probably learned at some point. If you've done any bar chords, you certainly know this E-shaped bar chord. Okay, and then the last one would be the D chord. Notice I've got the D shape here. I added a finger here just to add an extra bass note. But I could just play 3 strings. So those are all C chords. C with an A shape, C with a C shape, C with an A shape, C with a G shape, C with an E shape, and C with a D shape. C, A, G, E, D. Any chord that you pick, you can just go up in that order. For instance, if I did the A chord, that's A with an A shape, A with a G shape. Remember, we got the big stretched out version, and then we've got this version where we're still stretched out with the pinky, but we don't have to get these other fingers in here. So that's A with a G shape. The next in the order would be E, so A with an E shape, and A with a D shape, and we haven't done A with a C shape, so it's kind of like the D shape here. That is embedded in the C shape. I just have these 2 fingers, this first finger barring, and then I use my middle finger instead of 3 fingers, and I've got the ring finger and the pinky, and I've got a C shape there. Okay. Now, 7th chords. I'm using a lot of 7th chords in the Ironweed Rag. Let me play through that first verse again. Those are pretty typical blues with an interesting turnaround. I started off with E, and I am of course using an alternating bass for my chords. E and A are my first chords, and then I go to a turnaround where I use C#7, and then this chord, which is really based on, this is a G7, but I'm only going to use 3 fingers here, and drop that down to an F#7. So B7. Okay, now in the next verse, and I'm only showing you 2 verses here, there's a third verse, but I don't want this video to get too long. So in the next verse, okay, that's all my E chord. What did I do? Okay, I've got, this is an E7 chord. It's based out of the C shape. You know, a C shaped 7 chord. Here's your E7, and then what I do is I move the chord around a little bit. Where my pinky is, I'm going to put my ring finger, and then my pinky is going to extend the chord down to the B note played on the 1st string at the 7th fret. So now I've got this chord. If you ever played Deep River Blues, you know this chord. And then this chord allows me, this chord shape allows me to do some nice pull-offs and descending runs. I know I'm playing in E major, so I'm doing a little notes based off of an E major bar chord, or excuse me, E major scale. Okay, and then I go down here. What did I do there? This is a diminished chord. It's E diminished, and then I slide that into a D-shaped 7th chord. You all know D7 for you right there. Move that 2 frets up, and you have an E7 chord. So these little diminished chords are usually right next door to the 7th chords. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You can play those diminished chords right next door. That's a very cool sound. All the while there, I'm able to keep this alternating bass. My A chord. My A chord is basically just an A7 with an E shape. I reduce it down to just barring 4 strings, keep the A string open. So now my alternating bass is the 5th and 4th string. And I do this little chromatic rundown from B, which is basically A9, A add 9, and then descend down to A. Back to my E, C#7, G, F#, Now I'll play that turnaround again with other CAGED ideas. So I have this is my C#7 up here, and you notice I use my thumb over the top to play my bass note. This is again based on an E-shaped 7 chord. And then I have a D9 chord, or excuse me, a G9 to F#9 to another E-shaped B7 chord, back to E. So I'll do that those two turnarounds.